Apparently, when your neighbor shows up at 11:15 p.m. with mascara running down her face saying your husband collapsed in her living room, it's not the kind of neighborhood drama you gossip about at book club. There I was, Thursday night in Plano, Texas, already in my ratty college sweatshirt, and about to fall asleep watching another true crime documentary. Because nothing says healthy marriage like actively researching murder methods at bedtime, right? When Marin from 3 houses down started pounding on my door like the HOA was coming to repo her lawn flamingos. Tessa, your husband Dean is at my place. He passed out. I don't know how to say this, but Conrad came home early from his Dallas trip and walked in on us, and Dean just dropped. Like a sack of potatoes. A guilty, cheating sack of potatoes. You know that moment when your brain just buffers? Like when you're streaming a show and it freezes mid-scene? That was me. Standing there in my doorway, looking at my neighbor, my married neighbor who hosted our last 4th of July block party, telling me she'd been screwing my husband and he'd literally fainted from getting caught. The suburban American dream, ladies and gentlemen, now with bonus adultery and medical emergencies. I didn't scream, didn't cry, didn't even blink. I just grabbed my phone, shoved my feet into my Target slides, and followed Marin's panicked speed walking back to her perfectly landscaped McMansion. Because apparently, that's what you do when your 8-year marriage implodes at 11:17 p.m. on a Thursday. You put on your slides and deal with it. The walk to Marin's house took maybe 90 seconds, but my brain had already processed about 17 different scenarios. Dean having an affair? Honestly, the signs were there. I just chose to ignore them like a respectable suburban wife who doesn't want to admit her husband's late nights at the office excuse was older than our mortgage. Working late again, babe. Don't wait up. Client dinner in Fort Worth. Might crash at a hotel. Team building weekend in Austin. You know how it is. Yeah, I knew how it was. I just didn't know it was happening 3 houses down from our bedroom. Marin's front door was wide open. Never a good sign in Texas, where we keep our AC running like NASA preparing for Mars colonization. And there he was, Dean, my husband of 8 years, the man who promised to love me through sickness and health, richer or poorer, apparently decided forsaking all others was more of a suggestion than a vow. He was sprawled on Marin's beige carpet, the expensive kind from that boutique place in Legacy West, looking like someone had unplugged him mid-sentence. Conrad sat in his leather recliner, staring at the wall with the expression of a man watching his entire life reformat like a corrupted hard drive. No one was crying. No one was yelling. It was just pathetically quiet. I walked straight to Marin's kitchen because I'd been here before for wine nights and knew exactly where she kept everything, grabbed a glass, filled it with cold water from the fridge dispenser, walked back to the living room and dumped the entire thing on Dean's face. He sputtered awake like a drowning man breaking the surface, eyes wild, disoriented. Then he saw me. Then he saw Conrad. Then he saw Marin hovering near the hallway like she was contemplating making a run for it. Tessa, I can explain. Save it. My voice came out flat. Dead. The vocal equivalent of a dial tone. Get up. Walk home. We'll talk in the morning. Or not. I genuinely don't care right now. Dean scrambled to his feet, still dripping, looking between me and Conrad like he was waiting for someone to tell him what to do. Typical Dean. Always needed explicit instructions. Couldn't even cheat on me with any originality. Went for the convenient neighbor instead of putting in actual effort to find someone interesting. But, walk home, Dean. I enunciated each word like I was teaching English as a second language. You passed out from guilt and shock. Congratulations. You're officially the most pathetic cheater in Collin County. Now get out before I change my mind about remaining civil. He left. Didn't even try to defend himself. Just grabbed his shoes from near Marin's front door and slunk out like a dog who'd been caught eating garbage. I turned to Conrad, who hadn't moved an inch. He looked like someone had hit pause on his entire existence. You want me to call anyone? Your mom? A friend? He shook his head slowly. No. Thank you. For handling this. Don't thank me. I didn't do it for you. Marin made some kind of squeaking noise from the hallway. I didn't even look at her. What was I supposed to say? Thanks for the 4th of July potato salad, and also for sleeping with my husband. There's no Hallmark card for that. I walked out of that house and back to mine. Those 90 seconds feeling longer than my entire 8-year marriage, and locked my door. Stood in my kitchen. Looked around at our accumulated life together. The coffee maker I'd bought him for his birthday. The photos on the fridge from our trip to Santa Fe 3 years ago. The mortgage papers on the counter from our refinance last fall. 8 years. We'd been married for 8 years. Met at a barbecue in Dallas when I was 29 and optimistic about finding a partner who actually had his life together. Dean seemed perfect on paper. Stable job, owned his car outright, knew how to grill a proper brisket. What more could a Texas girl want? Apparently, a husband who didn't recreationally pass out in other women's living rooms when caught. I sat down at our kitchen table, the farmhouse-style one I'd found on Facebook Marketplace and Dean had complained about loading into the truck, and started laughing. Not the cute, quirky laugh from romantic comedies, the kind of unhinged, slightly manic laugh that would concern any mental health professional within earshot. My husband fainted. He literally fainted, like a Victorian lady discovering her ankles were visible. That's how guilty and shocked he was at getting caught. You can't even make this up. This was my life now. This was the story I'd have to tell people. How did you discover your husband's affair? Oh, the other woman knocked on my door at 11 p.m. because he collapsed when her husband walked in. Move over, Jerry Springer. Plano, Texas, has entered the chat. I sat there in that kitchen, still wearing my college sweatshirt and slides, and realized something. I wasn't devastated. I wasn't crying. I was just done. 8 years of working late and client dinners, and sensing something was off, but convincing myself I was being paranoid. 8 years of making excuses for why our marriage felt more like a successful roommate situation than an actual partnership. The trash took itself out tonight. It just happened to need medical attention first. Friday morning arrived with all the subtlety of a hangover you didn't earn. I woke up at 6:47 a.m., because my body apparently decided sleep was optional during personal crises, to find Dean's side of the bed untouched. He'd spent the night in our guest room, the one we kept for visitors who never came because we were too busy pretending our marriage was fulfilling to actually maintain friendships. I made coffee. Strong. The kind that tastes like liquid bitterness, which felt appropriate given my current life circumstances. Dean shuffled into the kitchen around 7:15, looking like he'd aged a decade overnight. Good. Suffering builds character, or so my grandmother used to say. Tessa, we need to talk. Oh, now we need to talk? Fantastic timing, Dean, really. 8 years of marriage and you finally want to communicate. Should I alert the media? He flinched. Actually flinched. Like my words were physical objects I was throwing at his face. I messed up. I know I messed up. It was a mistake. A mistake is forgetting to pick up milk at Target. A mistake is missing our anniversary, which, by the way, you did last year. An affair with our neighbor is a choice. Multiple choices, actually. You chose her house. Chose her bed, probably. Chose to risk our marriage for someone who posts gym selfies with inspirational quotes about hustle culture. His jaw tightened. You don't understand. You're right. I don't understand. Explain it to me, Dean. Use small words so my simple little wife brain can comprehend why you needed to test the structural integrity of Marin's guest bedroom. Was it the convenience? The thrill? The fact that she actually listens to your boring sales stories? The coffee tasted like betrayal. Or maybe that was just my life now. Hard to tell the difference. Dean sat down at our kitchen table, the one I'd lovingly restored while he complained about the paint fumes, and put his head in his hands. It started 6 months ago, after the company holiday party in December. We were both drunk and it just happened. 6 months. 6 months. I'd been living in a sitcom I didn't audition for since December. Christmas, New Year's, Valentine's Day. Our anniversary in June was coming up in 3 weeks, and he'd been cheating through all of it. How considerate of you to maintain the affair through all major holidays. Really shows commitment. To her, I mean. Not to our marriage vows. I wanted to end it. I tried. Oh, you tried? Well, gold star for effort, Dean. Should I frame your participation trophy next to our wedding photos? My phone buzzed on the counter. Text from my friend Paige, who lived across town. Girl, you okay? Just saw Dean's car in your driveway at 7 a.m. and I know you two have been having issues. Coffee later. Small town problems. Everyone knows everyone's business before you even process it yourself. Plano had 50,000 people, but somehow felt like a fishbowl where everyone was watching everyone else's drama like it was premium cable. I ignored the text. Focused on Dean, who was still doing his wounded puppy impression. Here's what's going to happen. You have until 5 p.m. today to find somewhere else to stay. Pack your essentials. I don't care if it's a hotel, your buddy Mark's couch, or Marin's guest room for all I care. Oh wait, that one's probably burned now. Tessa? I'm not done. You'll transfer half of our joint savings to my personal account by end of business today. Consider it an advance on whatever divorce settlement we work out. You'll also take your name off the utilities, the internet, and that stupid gym membership you never use but insist on keeping. He stared at me like I'd grown a second head. You can't just kick me out. This is my house too. Actually, I can. Check the mortgage paperwork, Dean. My credit score got us this loan because yours was trashed from that failed business venture before we met. My name is primary, you're secondary. And right now, I'm exercising my primary right to not share oxygen with someone who thought the neighbor was a reasonable dating option. The look on his face was almost worth the emotional trauma. Almost. He left for work around 8:30, probably to process with his coworkers, which meant complaining about his unreasonable wife, who didn't appreciate his honesty. I spent the morning doing something I should have done years ago, going through our financial records with the attention to detail I usually reserved for crafting viral social media content. Dean made $127,000 a year. I made roughly $48,000 from my freelance work. We'd been splitting household expenses 50-50 because he insisted on fairness, even though he earned nearly 3 times what I did. Our joint savings account had $67,000. The mortgage was $2,400 monthly. He'd been spending an average of $800 extra per month for the past 6 months on miscellaneous expenses. Let me translate miscellaneous expenses for you. Dinner dates with Marin while I ate leftover pasta at home because I was too busy with work to cook properly. I screenshot everything. Every transaction. Every suspicious charge at restaurants I'd never been to. Every late-night Uber that didn't match his working late timeline. Because if this was going to court, and it probably was, I'd be walking in with documentation that would make forensic accountants weep with joy. Around 11 a.m., my doorbell rang. I considered ignoring it. Social interaction felt like asking too much of my emotional bandwidth, but suburban curiosity won. Never know when it might be Amazon delivering something that'll temporarily fill the void where my marriage used to be. It was Conrad. He stood on my porch, holding 2 Starbucks cups and looking like he'd also discovered sleep was a luxury reserved for people whose lives weren't currently imploding. I know this is weird. Everything about this situation is weird. But I figured we're the only 2 people in this neighborhood who understand how spectacularly awful yesterday was, and maybe we could just, I don't know, acknowledge that? I took the coffee. Caramel macchiato. My usual order. How did you know? Marin mentioned it once, back when we all pretended to be friendly neighbors who weren't secretly destroying each other's lives. Fair point. We sat on my porch steps like 2 shell-shocked survivors of the same disaster. Didn't say much. Just existed in the same proximity while processing the dumpster fire our spouses had created. It felt oddly normal. More normal than my marriage had felt in years, honestly. My lawyer's name is Rebecca Okoye, Conrad said after a long silence. She's expensive but ruthless. If you need a referral, I might take you up on that. He pulled out his phone, sent me her contact information. Marin's moving back to Lubbock. Her parents still live there. She's leaving Sunday. That's fast. When you burn down your life, might as well start over somewhere that doesn't have constant reminders of your terrible decisions. We sat there for another 10 minutes, drinking overpriced coffee and watching our neighborhood continue like nothing had exploded. Mrs. Patterson walked her golden doodle. The lawn service truck rumbled past. Someone's kid practiced skateboard tricks in their driveway. Life just kept going. Rude, honestly. Conrad stood to leave, then paused. I saw your LinkedIn profile a few months back, before all this. That library campaign you ran, the one that tripled their community engagement? That was brilliant. Really. And then he left, and I sat there wondering if the strangest part of yesterday was discovering my husband's affair, or receiving a genuine compliment on my work from the man whose wife he'd been sleeping with. Plot twist. Sometimes validation comes from the weirdest places. Saturday morning, I did what any self-respecting woman in my position would do. I went full forensic accountant on Dean's digital life. Not proud of it, not ashamed either. Desperate times call for morally ambiguous measures. Dean had left for his emergency work meeting. Translation. Hiding at Mark's apartment while pretending productivity, and forgot to log out of our shared iPad. The one we bought for household management that he barely used because technology was apparently my job along with cooking, cleaning, and pretending his sales stories were interesting. His email was wide open, like leaving the vault door swinging while the security guard napped. Amateur hour. I started with December, the beginning of his 6-month adventure in terrible decision-making. Innocent enough at first. Work emails, spam, promotional garbage from REI about hiking gear he'd never use. Then I found it. An email thread with his company's HR department dated December 18th. Subject line: regarding your expense report discrepancies, final warning. My coffee went cold while I read through 17 emails detailing how Dean had been falsifying expense reports for 9 months. 9 months. He'd been claiming personal dinners as client meetings, reporting mileage for trips he never took, even billing the company for a team-building weekend in Austin that was actually him and Marin at some boutique hotel in Fredericksburg. The company had caught him in November, given him a final warning in December. He had until March to repay $34,000 in fraudulent expenses or face termination and possible legal action. March. That deadline had passed 2 months ago. I kept reading. Found another thread. Dean had taken out a personal loan in January, $40,000 at 17% interest with brutal 12-month repayment terms, from some predatory lender in Dallas. Used it to repay his company, avoided prosecution, kept his job by the skin of his teeth. But here's the beautiful part. He'd been making payments on that loan from our joint savings account, the account I'd been contributing to equally despite earning 1/3 of his salary. The account that should have had closer to $90,000, but only had $67,000, because my husband was secretly paying off debt from his own criminal stupidity. I screenshot everything, downloaded the entire email thread, saved it in 3 separate cloud storage locations because I wasn't about to lose this goldmine to technical difficulties. Then I found the second bombshell, an email from Marin, dated April 30th, 3 weeks ago. We need to talk. I'm late. Took a test this morning. We have a situation. My hands shook so hard I nearly dropped the iPad. No, absolutely not. This couldn't be. Dean's response. Are you sure? How late? This can't be happening right now. I can't afford this. Marin. 2 weeks. I've been regular my whole life. I'm taking another test tomorrow. What do you mean you can't afford this? Dean. Nothing. Ignore that. Let me know what the second test says. We'll figure it out. I scrolled frantically through the rest of April, into May. Found another message from May 8th. Marin. False alarm. Got my period yesterday. We're clear. Thank God. Dean. Jesus. That was too close. We need to be more careful. Marin. Or we could just stop. This is getting too complicated. Dean. You're right. Let's cool things off. After next week, maybe. Narrator voice. They did not, in fact, cool things off. I sat on my couch. The expensive sectional dean insisted we needed for hosting parties we never threw, and laughed until tears ran down my face. Not cute tears. The unhinged kind that would concern any reasonable observer. My husband had committed expense fraud, taken out a predatory loan, used our joint savings to cover his criminal activity, nearly gotten his mistress pregnant, and still got caught because he was too stupid to end the affair when he had the perfect exit opportunity. This wasn't just a cheating scandal. This was a masterclass in self-sabotage. I called Rebecca Okoye, the lawyer Conrad had recommended. She answered on the second ring, which either meant excellent service or she was desperate for clients. Didn't care which. Rebecca Okoye, Conrad mentioned you might call. I need a consultation. Today, if possible. My husband's been cheating, but that's honestly the least interesting part of this situation. I have an opening at 2 p.m. Bring documentation. All of it. I spent the next 3 hours organizing my evidence into a presentation that would make corporate lawyers weep, created a timeline, cross-referenced bank statements with his expense fraud emails, built a narrative so airtight it could survive Supreme Court scrutiny. At 1:45 p.m., I drove to Rebecca's office in Legacy West. She practiced out of one of those sleek glass buildings that screamed, "I cost more per hour than your car payment." Good. I wanted expensive. Expensive meant competent. Expensive meant Dean was about to discover consequences had interest rates too. Rebecca was exactly what I needed. Mid-40s, sharp suit, eyes like a predator who'd spotted wounded prey. She reviewed my documentation for 20 minutes without speaking, just nodding occasionally, making notes, highlighting sections. Finally, this is the most organized evidence package I've seen in 11 years of practice. You could teach my paralegals a thing or two. I create viral social media campaigns for a living. Organization is my superpower. What's my position? She leaned back in her leather chair. Legally? You're in an excellent position. He committed fraud, documented and admitted in writing. He used joint marital assets to cover personal criminal debt without your knowledge or consent. Texas is a community property state, but his fraudulent activity changes the calculation significantly. You could argue for majority asset division based on his financial misconduct during the marriage. What about his job? What about it? If his company found out he took out a predatory loan to cover expense fraud, would they fire him? Rebecca's smile could have cut glass. That depends. Did his employment contract include any clauses about financial liability or personal conduct? I don't know, but I bet I could find out. Hypothetically, if someone were to inform his employer about his financial instability and questionable judgment, purely out of concern for corporate security, of course, they might decide he's a liability. Regional sales managers handle significant accounts. Companies don't love employees who've proven they'll commit fraud when financially pressured. I understood perfectly. How long would a divorce take? With this evidence? If he's smart, he'll settle. 4 to 6 months. But he won't fight. Not when he realizes what you have. And if I wanted to ensure his life became sufficiently complicated that settling quickly seemed like his best option, Rebecca closed my file folder. I think we're going to work very well together, Tessa. I left her office at 3:47 p.m. with a retainer agreement, a strategy session scheduled for Monday, and a clarity I hadn't felt in years. Dean thought he was dealing with the sweet wife who tolerated his mediocrity and ignored his inadequacies. He had no idea he'd just activated someone who turned declining library attendance into a viral community movement. Marketing is just strategic manipulation with better branding. And I was about to launch the campaign of my career. Sunday morning, I watched Marin load boxes into a U-Haul from my bedroom window. Conrad helped her, neither speaking. They looked like strangers performing a choreographed dance they'd rehearsed but never perfected. She'd be in Lubbock by evening, starting over in a town that probably still had her high school yearbook photos hanging in her parents' living room. Good riddance. My phone buzzed. Text from Conrad. She's gone in an hour. Lunch tomorrow? I have a legitimate job offer. Not a pity thing. Actually need your skills. I smiled. Replied, let's talk. Revenge is a dish best served with professional networking opportunities. Monday lunch with Conrad wasn't at some trendy Legacy West restaurant where everyone Instagrams their overpriced avocado toast. We met at a hole-in-the-wall Vietnamese place in Richardson, where the PHO was authentic and the Wi-Fi was terrible. Perfect for business discussions you didn't want accidentally live-streamed. My company does operational consulting for mid-sized businesses, Conrad explained between bites of banh mi. We help them optimize workflows, cut inefficiencies, scale sustainably. What we're terrible at is digital presence. Our website looks like it was built in 2003. Our social media is a graveyard. We have zero online engagement despite having genuinely good results. And you want me to fix that. I want you to build it from scratch. Head of Marketing and Digital Strategy. Salary starts at $95,000. Full benefits. Performance bonuses tied to measurable growth metrics. Equity options after year 1 if things go well. I set down my spring roll. That's almost double what I made freelancing. You turned a public library into a community sensation. Tripled their foot traffic. Got them written up in D Magazine. If you can make people excited about checking out books, imagine what you could do with actual marketing budget and corporate clients who desperately need what we're selling. When would you want me to start? 2 weeks? Month? Your timeline. I'm not trying to rush you while your life is actively exploding. I appreciated the honesty. What about optics? Won't clients think it's weird you hired your ex-wife's former neighbor who your wife was having an affair with? That's a lot of soap opera baggage. Conrad shrugged. Marin's gone. Dean will be gone soon. And honestly, anyone who judges our professional relationship based on our spouse's terrible choices can take their business elsewhere. I'm not interested in clients who value gossip over results. I'll need that in writing. The job offer, I mean. Not the anti-gossip manifesto. He pulled out a folder. Contract already drafted. He'd been serious. I signed it right there between the PAO and spring rolls. Started date, Monday, June 10th. 2 weeks to finalize my divorce strategy and tie up freelance obligations. Plenty of time to watch Dean's world crumble. Tuesday morning, I did something beautiful. Something that would have made Machiavelli proud. I called Dean's company. Asked to speak with his supervisor, a woman named Patricia whom I'd met exactly once at a holiday party, where she'd consumed 4 glasses of wine and told me Dean was adequate but unimpressive. Corporate honesty is a gift. Patricia, this is Tessa, Dean's wife. I need to inform you of something that might affect his employment. Dean took out a $40,000 personal loan in January at 17% interest. He's been making payments from our joint marital assets, and I'm currently in divorce proceedings. I'm concerned about his financial stability and judgment, especially given that he manages significant client accounts. I thought your company should be aware. Silence. Long enough that I wondered if she'd hung up. Then, thank you for bringing this to my attention. We'll look into it. She hung up. I smiled, sipped my coffee, waited. Wednesday afternoon, Dean called me 17 times. I let every single one go to voicemail. Finally, he texted, "They're investigating me again. They want documentation of my personal finances. Did you do this? Did you call them?" I replied, "I informed them of facts relevant to your professional capacity. What they choose to do with that information is their business. Also, I need you to sign the preliminary divorce paperwork Rebecca sent over. It's very reasonable. You should probably sign it before your employment situation becomes more complicated." Thursday morning, Dean showed up at the house. I watched him through the window. Wrinkled shirt, unshaven, eyes like someone who'd discovered consequences were real and they had his address. I opened the door. Didn't invite him in. "You're destroying my life," he said, voice flat, defeated. "No, Dean. You destroyed your life. I'm just declining to go down with the ship. There's a difference." Patricia put me on administrative leave. Turns out they'd been quietly monitoring my expenses since March, waiting for more evidence. Your call gave them the justification they needed to move fast. They already had 2 years of discrepancies documented and ready. Sounds stressful. I could lose my job. Then I'll lose the house, the car, everything. You already lost the house. Check the settlement papers Rebecca sent. I'm keeping it. You're welcome to buy me out at current market value, $480,000. But somehow I suspect that's not financially feasible for you right now. His face went through several interesting color transitions, red to white to gray, like watching a sunset made of poor decisions. This is because of Marin. You're punishing me. I'm not punishing you. Punishment implies I'm emotionally invested in your suffering. I'm just ensuring I'm financially protected from the aftermath of your choices. Big difference. I'll fight this. I'll get a lawyer. With what money, Dean? Your salary's suspended. Your savings are depleted. Your credit is destroyed from that predatory loan. Most lawyers want a retainer. But please, fight it. Drag this out. Make it expensive. Rebecca charges $450 an hour and she's already anticipating your objections in her counter-filings. He left without another word. Drove away in his leased BMW that he definitely couldn't afford anymore. I felt nothing. Not satisfaction. Not sadness. Just the quiet relief of someone who'd finally removed a splinter that had been festering for years. Friday. Patricia called me directly. Dean's been terminated. Effective immediately. The investigation revealed the full scope of what we'd been tracking since spring. He'll be receiving formal notice today. I wanted you to know before he showed up at your door again. I appreciate that. Off the record? Thank you. You confirmed what we suspected. You did us a favor. Saturday, the house felt different. Lighter. Like someone had opened windows I didn't know were closed. I spent the morning rearranging furniture. Moved Dean's recliner to the garage. Bought new throw pillows from Target. Small changes. Symbolic ones. Thursday, exactly 2 weeks after Marin's midnight panic knock, I met Rebecca for coffee. She brought the preliminary settlement agreement. He signed everything without fighting a single clause. You get the house, 73% of remaining joint assets. He assumes full responsibility for the personal loan debt, and you're cleared of any financial liability from his employment fraud. Texas requires a mandatory 60-day waiting period before any divorce can be finalized. State law, no exceptions. But effectively, you're done with him. The rest is just paperwork and calendar watching. I signed my name on the preliminary documents. Tessa Barrett. The final decree would come later, but this was the moment that mattered. The choosing. When does the 60-day clock officially start? I asked. From the date we file, which will be Monday. So early August for the final decree. Mark your calendar for the best Tuesday of your life. Monday, June 10th. I started my first day as head of marketing and digital strategy at Conrad's firm. Real office. Real title. Real salary that didn't require me to chase freelance clients who thought exposure was valid currency. Conrad introduced me to the team. 12 people. Smart. Professional. None of them asked about my personal life or made assumptions about why I was there. They cared about results. Novel concept. My first project. Rebrand the entire company. New website. Social media strategy. Content calendar. Client testimonial campaign. The kind of work I'd been qualified to do for years, but never had the resources or authority to execute properly. I threw myself into it. Late nights, early mornings, strategy sessions, creative briefs, watching analytics climb, engagement increase, leads convert. 3 months later, we'd tripled our online inquiries, landed 2 major contracts worth $380,000 combined, got featured in Dallas Business Journal. Conrad approved my performance bonus, $15,000. More than I used to make in 4 months of freelancing. Dean? Last I heard through the neighborhood gossip network, he was working at a car dealership in Garland. Sales associate, commission only, living in a studio apartment near Lake Highlands. His BMW got repossessed in July. Marin stayed in Lubbock. Married some guy she knew from high school. Posted wedding photos on Facebook. I didn't attend. Shockingly. December in Texas means unpredictable weather and mandatory holiday parties where everyone pretends their year wasn't a complete dumpster fire. I attended Conrad's company holiday party wearing a dress that cost more than my old monthly freelance income, and feeling like someone who'd actually earned the right to be there. 7 months. That's how long it had been since Marin knocked on my door and inadvertently became the catalyst for the best career move of my life. Funny how destruction sometimes builds better foundations than staying comfortable ever could. The party was at some upscale venue in Frisco with an open bar and catering that didn't come from Costco. Our team had grown from 12 to 19 people. Revenue was up 42%. We'd won 2 industry awards for innovative digital strategy. My LinkedIn profile looked like a highlight reel instead of a participation trophy collection. Speech! Speech! Someone called out when Conrad raised his glass for the annual toast. The team cheered. I tried to hide behind my champagne flute. Failed. Conrad grinned. Tessa transformed our entire digital presence in 6 months. Turned us from invisible to unavoidable. She's the reason we're celebrating record growth instead of planning layoffs. So yeah, everyone thanked Tessa for your bonuses. They applauded. Actually meant it. Not the polite golf clap you give presentations you slept through. Real appreciation from people who respected competence over politics. I raised my glass. I'd like to thank my ex-husband's terrible judgment for creating the employment opportunity, and Conrad for being smart enough to separate professional potential from personal chaos. Cheers to making good decisions after watching other people make catastrophically bad ones. Everyone laughed, drank, moved on to gossip about whose ugly sweater was genuinely ugly versus ironically ugly. Normal office party things. The divorce became final in early August, exactly 61 days after we filed, as required by Texas law. I got the notification email while reviewing quarterly analytics. Signed the final decree electronically. Felt nothing. Just another task completed on a Tuesday afternoon. Dean didn't contest anything, probably because he couldn't afford to. The whole thing cost me $8,000 in legal fees, worth every penny for the peace of mind. Later at the party, standing near the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Frisco skyline, my friend Paige found me. She'd driven up from her side of Plano specifically for this party because apparently my life had become entertainment she couldn't miss. "You're glowing," she said. Like genuinely. Not the fake I'm fine glow you had for years with Dean. The real thing. Turns out getting rid of dead weight does wonders for your complexion. Have you heard from him at all? Dean texted me in October asking if I'd co-sign an apartment lease. I didn't respond. Blocked his number. Figured silence was more devastating than anything I could say. Cold. I love it. Not cold, practical. He made choices. Choices have consequences. I'm not a rehabilitation center for men who need to learn basic accountability. Paige clinked her glass against mine. What about Conrad? You two ever what? Date? God, no. We're colleagues who bonded over mutual spousal betrayal. That's not exactly romance novel material. Plus, he's still processing his own disaster. Last thing either of us needs is to complicate functional professional partnership with messy personal feelings. But if he asked, he won't, and I wouldn't. Some people are meant to be in your life as proof that good things can emerge from bad situations without becoming romantic cliches. She looked disappointed. Everyone wants a neat narrative bow where the betrayed spouses fall in love and live happily ever after. Real life doesn't work that way. Sometimes the happy ending is just being happy. Alone. With a career you actually earned and a bank account that isn't subsidizing someone else's fraud. I thought about Dean sometimes. Briefly. The way you think about a bad restaurant you'll never return to. Mostly I wondered if he'd learned anything, or if he was still blaming everyone except himself for his failures. Probably the latter. Self-awareness isn't typically cultivated in people who pass out from guilt instead of addressing problems directly. Marin was apparently pregnant now, due in March. Her Facebook photos showed a small house in Lubbock, a husband who looked vaguely like every guy from Friday Night Lights, and captions about new beginnings and blessed life. Good for her, I guess. We all cope differently. She chose geographical relocation and rapid remarriage. I chose professional domination and expensive throw pillows. The party wound down around 11. Conrad walked me to my car, the sensible Accord I'd bought in September after the divorce finalized, and I had actual disposable income. Thank you, he said, for taking a chance on this. On us. The company, I mean. You gave me an opportunity when my life was actively imploding. Thank you for seeing potential instead of liability. Same to you. Most people would have let their spouse's affair define them. You used it as a launching pad. I unlocked my car. Paused. You know what the weirdest part is? I'm grateful. Not for the betrayal itself, but for the clarity. I spent 8 years making excuses for mediocrity because leaving seemed harder than staying. Turns out leaving was the easy part. Staying would have been the real tragedy. Drove home to my house. My name on the mortgage. My furniture arranged how I wanted. My life built on choices I made instead of compromises I tolerated. The neighbors' Christmas lights were still on. Tacky inflatable Santa and all. Suburban Texas aesthetic in full glory. I smiled. Not because it was beautiful, because it was mine to judge from the comfort of my own space. Turns out the best revenge isn't destroying someone else's life. It's building yours so well that their downfall becomes irrelevant background noise. And that's the real tea.